Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Very excited to welcome you back to our athlete briefing number 3 for the Holiday Run Challenge 2024. Hope everyone is having an amazing week 2. Speaking of week 2, let's start with a quick review here. So, started the week with our VO2 max run, kind of working with those 1-minute intervals this week, kind of hitting that fast pace and sustaining for a little bit. Things we're trying to focus on here are maintaining a little bit faster pace, generating more power per stride, and getting some efficiency into your running in general. Workout number 2 was the threshold workout. So just extending our time at threshold, kind of a reminder of the characteristics of this style of training, lengthy periods of work, relatively short periods of rest between, working on sustaining that kind of endurance race pace feel and stretching out for our ability to kind of hold that endurance race pace for a little bit longer. So awfully productive session. Key run number 3, our endurance run. So easy effort running. So this is the building block of that big endurance engine that we need pretty much for every part of our running journey here. So quick housekeeping here. I want to make sure everyone's going in, continuing to check those boxes, chasing that 100% completion percentage. It is especially important in this very busy time of year. So consistency is key in the endurance arena, and so make sure to keep chasing that 100%. Let's jump into our week 3 workouts here. So very, almost carbon copy structure to the week. We're sticking with VO2 max, we're sticking with threshold, we're sticking with endurance. So kind of the theme of this challenge here. But naturally a slight uptick this week, especially in that VO2 max workout. So extending the intervals out just a little bit to just 1.5 minutes. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's about 50% increase, 30 to 60 to now 90 seconds. So we're upticking on those kind of work intervals for sure. Principles remain the same, however. We want to continue to be able to open up your stride, generate power, and build efficiency in these VO2 max intervals here. So that's what we're focused on. Very important during these workouts, especially as we start to get to longer duration, to really focus on maintaining a really nice, quick turnover. A lot of runners have a tendency to kind of open up their legs, kind of start overextending their stride in order to try to cover distance faster. But actually the power comes from ground contact. So you want to make sure you're turning over faster, putting power into your footfalls to generate more speed ultimately. So make sure you're not kind of opening up too far into like a long loping stride. Really focus on that good turnover in these higher pace ranges. Even though we have a little bit longer interval in these VO2 max workouts, the overall TSS, which stands for training stress score, is actually almost identical to our week 2 workout. So these work periods might feel a little bit harder, but the stress of the total workout remains very, very consistent. What that means is that I'm actually hoping you're going to feel even stronger here in week 3 than you felt in week 2. Or if you hated week 2, is that you're going to feel a little bit more confident and able to take on this workout in week 3 because you have another repetition, you've had another shot at it. And so this workout, even though to the kind of the eye test looks like it may be a big advancement, it's actually in terms of overall training stress, very, very similar. So you're going to be in a great shape to go and achieve this week 3 VO2 max workout. Workout number 2 next week, back to threshold naturally. So we're just extending our time a little bit more, extending the time at zone, extending the length of our max interval here. So just a reminder, this should feel like an endurance race pace. So it's something that's challenging, but not taking you to the brink on every interval. If you are just hanging on for dear life at the end of the interval, it's actually a little bit too hard, too fast. You overexcelled on the test or still need some time to work up to that point via the training. So I would actually just back off a little bit, potentially try half marathon pace instead of threshold pace. It's only a couple percentage points different. And if that takes it from feeling over the top to feeling just right, then that's a really good trade. So it should feel like something that you could sustain for at least kind of 40 minutes if you're running in a race situation. And if it's not feeling that way, it's not resonating, then reducing the pace is going to make this a much more beneficial workout for you. So this threshold zone in general, just as a reminder, is about building efficiency around your lactate threshold, but we're also working on challenging ourselves of holding a challenging pace for a little bit longer period of time. So it's very beneficial in trying to get ready to hold a tough pace in our 20-minute distance test. It also is an energy zone that translates to race distances all the way from the mile to the marathon. So this threshold work in terms of an energy zone perspective is very valuable, but the practice of holding these kind of tougher pace ranges for extended periods of time have big kind of mental toughness benefits when you all of a sudden then take it out onto the road and get deep and find a challenging part of a race. You kind of learn in these moments in training of how to work through those moments. So kind of the hidden benefit here of our threshold work. Finishing the week, this upcoming week, with our endurance run. So nice, a little bit longer run. So just take it nice and easy, relax, rewind, unwind, have some fun with this one. The goal is really just to continue for 60 minutes. So the pace is very much secondary. For our advanced or very experienced athletes, absolutely continue to feel free to extend this, go a little bit longer, a little bit further. This is your weekly long run, so you're gonna have to sync it up based upon your goals for the rest of the winter and spring. I'm gonna jump into some questions that came up during the week here. So the first question was, I'm beginning a 20-week marathon training plan and want to include strength. Team Wilpers has a 12-week plan that goes with the half marathon training, which I have done, or I could do the strength plan that goes with the challenge, such as the holiday challenge strength plan. It doesn't matter which I do. It's a great question. I have my opinion here. One of these days we'll actually get one to like pair up with the 20-week program. Until then, I actually would continue on the strength, the kind of holiday strength into winter run strength program. They're all great, but those are really good general fitness programs. I think they sync up best at the beginning of, especially of a marathon training cycle right now. And then maybe most importantly is they're not going to start a taper, after about like 7 weeks of the training. So week 8, 9, 10, the combination that two-part combo will get you 14, 15 weeks deep into training. In and around the point you're going to want to start backing off, reducing that kind of strength training load in the final weeks of your marathon training program anyway. So great job including strength, especially kind of early in your marathon progression. Huge benefits will come along with that. So nice job. Next question here was, can we talk about long run recovery? So besides warm up, cool down, and stretching, what other things help after those double-digit long runs? And this is a great question. And for me, post-long nutrition is hugely important to bounce back from those long sessions. So we have a glucose absorption window, or let me back up a little bit. We're burning carbs like crazy while we're running, and we need to reabsorb those carbs at the end of that session. So we have this glucose absorption window where our bodies are most able and most ready to reabsorb glucose, aka carbohydrates. And that window is best literally within 30 minutes at the end of the session. It starts to dwindle a little bit at that point, extends out to about 60, and then it's not that we can't absorb them, it's just much less efficient. So if you've pushed deep into the carbohydrate tank, you've gone 16, 17, 18 more miles, it's really, really, really important that you actually get not only calories in immediately following that workout, but carbohydrates to maximize that glucose absorption period and make sure you're starting to actually kickstart the recovery process sooner rather than later. So what we see a lot, I think a very common end to run, especially kind of in the colder weather here, is you finish, kind of come in, de-layer, try to warm up a little bit, hopefully do a little stretching, little rolling, go take a shower, get dressed, attend to your family, etc. And then finally it's time to think about food. Very easily you can lose an hour, hour and a half plus trying to go through that process, at which point you're certainly that time period is over. You might already kind of be on the decline energy wise, fading a little bit, and then need to kind of pick it back up. It just took too long to have it. So I really encourage athletes, especially when they get up in that distance of long run, to make the carbohydrate intake the first priority walking back in the door. So that might mean having like a little snack available, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a full meal. But especially for athletes that are commuting or driving to the workout, I want them to either have a recovery shake, something like a banana, apple, pretzels, whatever, a little carbohydrate-rich snack that they can take in immediately following that workout while they're going through the rest of their cool down routine. And then an hour, 2 hours later, you can kind of think about having a full meal to kind of bounce back. So protein also hugely important, but it doesn't have the same significance within that kind of tight timetable. So one more time, you just really want that carbohydrate-rich snack to kickstart the recovery process within 30 minutes of the run ending. In addition, I'm a big fan of both compression, and I'm just going to call it general warmth at the end of session. So from compression, I think you can look at the very cost-effective option of just like compression socks, compression sleeves, etc. You can look at the science a lot of different ways. It's very inconclusive on all of it, but I've always liked compression. Compression boots would be kind of the more cost extravagant way to go into this category. They feel awfully nice. Science is TBD, but they do feel good. So good options all around. Compression. I said warmth. I love hot soaks, but heat pads also work really well here. But hot soaks in the bath, using Epsom salts to kind of help muscle soreness, hot tubs, saunas, heat pads, etc. Both of those things, the compression and the warmth, are promoting blood flow after workouts, which is ultimately going to help the recovery process along a little bit. So a couple ideas there to probably, to hopefully very quickly bring into your routine. Our next question here is, I've been taking it easy with the quad strain. I'm going to start back up next week. Should I jump back into this training at slower paces or proceed in some other way? And so I'm going to recommend not jumping back into this training actually, even at the kind of the slower paces. I have I will call it a 3-part return to play protocol that I use pretty much with all athletes at almost every level. And step 1 is all easy running while you slowly rebuild volume. So if you've been historically running 30 miles a week, probably shouldn't come back in exactly at 30 miles a week. It depends how long you've been off. It might take 2 or 3 weeks to build back at all easy running to get to that volume that you've been sustaining before. Once you're returned to volume, will very slowly start to phase back in intensity. Once again, it depends on how long you've been off, but always starting a little bit lighter than where you left off last time, coming back in slowly. And when you feel like that is in a good spot where you feel like you can kind of take that final step, then you resume kind of the full level of training where you left off before. So this process, dependent upon how long you've been out and your history with running, how well you kind of bounce back, I will tell athletes can take 3 weeks all the way to 16 plus weeks. It really is just dependent upon how things are going, how fast you can progress through the process, but you need to be patient and you need to make sure that you're completing each step before you move on to the next step in that kind of return to play protocol. So be patient. Fueling during a run based on what science tells us. So everyone seems to do this differently, and I want to make evidence-based decisions that also won't mess with my digestive system. I always run empty, but realize there's a performance limit. And I wish I caught this question a little bit earlier, because it depends so much on the duration of the workout. So I am far from a sports scientist, but I'll do my best here. And I don't really recommend any sort of intra-workout fueling for workouts under 90 minutes. As long as you're fairly well hydrated coming in and have eaten sometime recently, you're probably fine. So most people can basically, in our body, we hold about 1,600 calories in the form of glucose or carbohydrates. We're using glucose like crazy. We're using carbs like crazy to kind of fuel our running. But that usually will carry us for at least 13, 14, 15, 16 or more miles, depending upon your efficiency running. So we've got a lot of calories on hand that can take us quite far, quite efficiently. So when you really think about the nutritional component of running and run training, it tends to come in the marathon arena where people are going for multiple hours, 2, 3, 4+ hours, at which point the nutritional piece becomes a big piece of the pie. And so there's no right answer per se, because ultimately it just depends on how efficiently you can handle absorption while running. And ultimately what you're doing in training is not just using fuel to recover for the workout. It's very, very rare that you're taking yourself all the way to a glycogen deprivation point. In essence, what you're training to do is teaching your body how to absorb energy, how to be able to digest basically glucose and fructose and change it into energy in the course of your run without creating that stomach issue. So it's tough, but that's what, probably the simpler way to describe it, you'll hear people refer to as like it's gut training or it's stomach training, that you're teaching your body how to handle that while exercising. And so athletes that can do it more effectively than another are absolutely going to have an advantage. So there was an old school kind of gold standard, which was to, like a gel every 45 minutes. And when, 10, 20 years ago, this was exactly what we were taught, was a gel every 45 minutes. And it was a really good, kind of baseline to get started off. And it's not a bad baseline now. However, through kind of new advancements, new technologies, you're seeing pros now take in over 100 grams of carbohydrates pretty routinely per hour, like 100 grams of carbohydrates per hour as part of a marathon, as part of an Ironman, et cetera, and still be able to compete at a really high level. I mean, running 4.5 minute miles, not quite 4.5, running incredibly quickly and still taking in this huge amount of calories. One gel, for comparison's sake, is about 20 grams of carbohydrates. So when you're looking at 100 grams of carbs versus 20 grams of carbs, huge difference. That being said, as a brand new athlete coming in, if I told you to take 5 gels in 1 hour, it's almost guaranteed to lead to some sort of stomach distress. So you have to train it and you have to get better and more efficient with it over the course of time. So for practical purposes, if I have a new athlete that I'm working with that doesn't have a big history of intra-workout nutrition, I start still at that gold standard, that kind of 1 gel per 45 minutes. Based on their preference, it takes some figuring out of, what's the taste profile we're going for, what's the consistency, etc. Once we get that into their routine, we start to look at moving it a little bit more frequently. So maybe 40 minutes, and 35 minutes, and 30 minutes. I would say that the current gold standard for athletes is actually as much as around 1 gel per every 15 to 20 minutes, which is an awful lot of gels. And to be quite honest, the pros, that 100 grams of carbs per hour, they're usually doing it in a fluid mix that's incredibly nutritionally dense. But most of us don't have the ability to have pro level bottle service out there on the race. So hence gels being a little bit more efficient. But that's kind of the range that we're looking for in athletes right now, is starting out still at that gold standard around 1 every 45 minutes. And for my most experienced, most advanced athletes, in terms of nutrition and gut training, all the way down to about as frequently as 1 gel every 15 minutes for competition. So huge variation, but hopefully that helps. Just know, once again, there's no right answer. It has to do with how well you can process fuel on the run. And I think our final question here was, I recently started doing a cold water plunge after running. So how long should I be waiting between the run and getting in the cold water? It's been amazing with being able to recover faster than on days that I don't do it. So glad you like it. I also like a cold plunge, and I hope I don't entirely burst your bubble on this one, but it should be quite some time between the two. So I would say a minimum of 4 hours, and maybe 8 to 10 hours would be even better. So when I think about the cold plunge, I kind of would think about it most comparably with icing and some of the new studying on icing, which is, well, let me rephrase it slightly differently here, is does it stop inflammation or reduce inflammation? And does it, make pain go away? Does it make you feel a little bit better immediately after? 100% it does. The problem with that is that inflammation and soreness are our body's response mechanisms to help heal our muscles. So that inflammation, going back to the heat and the compression of generating blood flow, is exactly what our body does naturally to generate blood flow. We have more blood flow to the area to help heal those damaged muscles, tendons, etc. So when you kind of cold water shock it, if you will, or apply ice to something, it's immediately stopping that recovery process. So you're going to feel better. You're not going to get the inflammation. When you climb out of that thing after 2 or 3 minutes, it's genuinely going to be a nice feeling. However, I would urge you to kind of wait, like I said, till maybe later in the day and try the cold plunge at that point. So it's going to be a little bit less fulfilling emotionally to kind of come out feeling fresh, feeling nice after that cold plunge. But there are definitely some health benefits, some really interesting studies to go along with cold plunge. There's absolutely a spot in your training journey and your recovery journey. But once again, I would urge you to wait till significantly later in the day to do that plunge as opposed to right after your run. Hopefully that helps. Otherwise, thanks so much for being here. I hope you have an amazing week 3. Keep it up. I can't wait to see you back here next Friday. Have a great one.